What is going on, everyone? Thank you all for watching my video today. It's been a while since I put out a YouTube video. It's coming in on close to a month now, but I thought with the NFL draft starting last night, now is as good a time as ever to make a bit of a comeback because the first round of the NFL draft went down last night and there's a lot of twists and turns. We knew a lot of people thought this would be an unpredictable draft. A lot of the mock drafts were not similar to other people's mock drafts. A lot of different opinions were out there, and a lot of interesting things happened last night. Some unpredictable, some predictable, but overall, I thought there was a lot of different things to take away. So I just wanted to get into what takeaways I had, some winners and losers, all that kind of stuff. Just some thoughts I had. So getting right into it, I thought the biggest winner of the night, the biggest story coming out, is how the Philadelphia Eagles are now maybe not contenders in the NFC, but whatever the level under that is, that's what the Eagles are at now because there's not a lot of, and the contenders in the NFC, there's like two. It's, in my mind right now, it's the Rams and maybe the Buccaneers. I don't think there's a lot of contenders, pure contenders in the NFC. So the Eagles could be right in the mix because what they did last night, Howie Roseman totally redeemed himself. And I made a video last month about the Eagles, how this draft was going to be crucial for how their season in 2022 plays out. What they did was incredible. Trading up to number 13 to take Jordan Davis, by far the best defensive lineman in this draft, or defensive tackle rather. And I was a little not critical of the pick because I think Jordan Davis is a really good player, but I was like, well, the Eagles, their biggest hole isn't the D line. That's one of their strengths. But coming into day two tonight, they can certainly address the cornerback position, the offensive line. So I thought getting Jordan Davis, who is much younger than the rest of their D line, could set that D line up to continue to be great for years to come. He could really be the anchor of that defensive line. And then at number 18, they traded that pick. They started out with 3 first-round picks. They finished with 1, but they trade number 18 to the Tennessee Titans for A.J. Brown and immediately give him a new 4-year, $100 million contract. And this is, in my eyes, exactly the kind of move the Eagles needed. I thought that if Jalen Hurts was even going to get the chance to prove himself as a starting caliber quarterback, he needed more than just Devontae Smith and Dallas Goedert, I guess, as well, to prove himself. He needed weapons so he could continue to grow. And A.J. Brown, both as a deep threat and just as a receiver in general, I think is the perfect addition to this Eagles team. He's only 24 years old, so he's going to be around for as long as the injuries don't continue to pile up. He'll be around for a while. That is a concern. He has had a lot of nagging injuries, but nothing too severe thus far, so the Eagles will hope he can stay healthy. But even if he misses 4 games a year, I think this is still a really good trade for the Eagles, especially if Devontae Smith continues to develop. You now have 3 pass catchers that you can really rely on, and if Kez Watkins and even Greg Ward or Zach Pascal, if they give you anything, now you're really looking at a strong receiver room. And I think the Eagles, I think now is the great time. They should go out and sign Tyrann Mathieu after the draft, bring him into the safety room, and at that point, this Eagles team has very few weaknesses. Maybe not too many guys who are super strong, like super top end of their positions in the league, only a few of those, but a lot of good players across the whole roster. And I think the Eagles are perfectly set up to win the NFC East this season. I would be really surprised if they didn't, to be honest. I thought this was a huge win for the Eagles. It's a huge win for Howie Roseman, who, I could make a whole video just about Howie Roseman's Eagles career, but he messes up with the dream team, but then he redeems it with the whole Foles era. But then the Chip Kelly thing, he messes that up by kind of giving control to Chip Kelly, but then he takes it back, builds the Super Bowl team, but then drafts Rager, drafts JJ, makes some bad picks. But now over the last 2 drafts, he's really redeemed himself, and now the Eagles are in a great situation going forward. So I thought the Eagles were the number 1 winner of the draft night of draft night last night. Another huge winner, the New York Jets. Joe Douglas, former Eagles front office man, he's the GM of the Jets now. He's been killing it the last 2 drafts. Last year, they made 4 great selections in Zach Wilson, Elijah Vera Tucker, Elijah Moore, and Michael Carter. And this year, in the first round, they got 3 players who I think their draft class this year could be almost as good as last year's was, because they take Sauce Gardner 4th overall in the draft. A corner was something the Jets really needed, and they get what some consider the best corner in the draft. Derek Stingley went 3rd ahead of him, but some people think Gardner's the best corner in the draft, and the Jets got their man there. They have a new number 1 corner, which they certainly needed because their secondary was arguably the weakest point of the team last season. Then they take Garrett Wilson 10th overall, get a receiver. And with Elijah Moore, Garrett Wilson, even Corey Davis, if he can get healthy, and Braxton Berrios, who could develop into a solid slot guy as well as a great kick returner he already is, I really think the Jets have good weapons, and I think Zach Wilson is in a great position to continue to grow. And then if that wasn't enough, the Jets trade into the Titans' 26th overall pick, and they take Jermaine Johnson II, the defensive end, who I'll admit I didn't know much about him, but Mel Kiper, he had him high up on his his draft board. I think he had him, probably in his top 15. He slides all the way to 26. He falls right into the Jets' lap. That's a huge pick for them. They got him on their defense now. They're building that front seven for a few years now. They'll get Carl Lawson back, so now they have two solid pass rushers on that D line. I think the Jets have been killing it all offseason, all last year's draft. And if the Jets were in the NFC, I would entertain them as possibly even a playoff team. But in the AFC, it's going to be a hard road to get there. They're inexperienced, they're young, and I don't see them even sniffing the playoffs. But in the weak NFC, I could really see them competing. I think they got a lot of talent. I think they got a bright future. So I'd say the Jets also had a fantastic day one of the draft. Now, another team that I thought did a great job was the Baltimore Ravens. So at number 14, they take Kyle Hamilton, the best safety in this draft by far. He slides to 14, and they sign Marcus Williams from the Saints in this offseason. So all of a sudden, they have a really good safety tandem. They still have Deshaun Elliott as well. So three solid safeties. And, they were talking about Kyle Hamilton kind of like he can also, play maybe some, not like linebacker full-time, but he can get in the gap. He can kind of like Jamal Adams, but hopefully no one trades 2 first-round picks for Kyle Hamilton in the future. But if they can get him to play like Jamal Adams when Jamal Adams was on the Jets, that's a great player. So to get him at 14 is a huge value. They get Tyler Linderbaum later because they trade Hollywood Brown to the Cardinals, who I'm going to get to in my losers section. I don't know why the Cardinals traded a first-round draft pick for Hollywood Brown, but it gave the Ravens the opportunity to take Tyler Linderbaum, probably the best center the best center in this draft, one of the best offensive linemen. They take him later in the first round. The highlights they were showing of him, I mean, it's not like I watch a ton of Iowa college football, but man, that guy he looked dominant as any center I've seen coming in the draft. So after losing Bradley Bozeman, they replaced him with probably maybe even a better player in the draft. So huge add to the defense, huge add to the offensive line. Now the concern would be the Ravens. They don't really have any receivers outside of Rashad Bateman right now, although they still have Mark Andrews at tight end. And I'm okay with it because I think even though they don't have a lot of talent right now, I think Marquise Brown was not worth a first-round pick. I think they totally stole that value from the Cardinals there, and they get 2 good players, probably the best at their positions in Hamilton and Linderbaum in this draft. So I think it's a huge win for the Ravens. And speaking of receivers, that brings me to what I consider maybe not a whole entire winner, but I have to talk about them because everyone's going to be talking about it. I think the Green Bay Packers, if they trade up, or maybe not even trade up, maybe if they just wait till 20 or whatever their pick in the second round is and take a receiver. If they get a receiver with their first pick tonight, I think the Packers nailed this draft because you talk about the receivers. They need a receiver desperately. They traded Devontae Adams. They got the picks from the Raiders. They used them on the 2 Georgia defenders, Quay Walker, the linebacker, and the defensive lineman, Devontae Wyatt. And let me first say this plugs 2 huge holes in the Packers defense. Besides Kenny Clark, we've been desperately needing an extra defensive lineman to help him out. We get one here in Wyatt if he develops into a star. And besides Jordan Love, every first-round pick made by Brian Gutekunst during his time as Packers GM has worked out. From Gary to Alexander, you keep going down. The Eric Stokes last year looked good, another former Georgia defender. And then when you get Quay Walker to go with Devondre Campbell, all of a sudden you got two linebackers who, in theory, should be able to really step up our run defense even more so than it improved last year. But the thing about the receivers that I really want to hammer home here, when you look at the mock drafts, who were the receivers everyone wanted the Packers to take? It was Jahan Dotson and it was Treylon Burks at either 28 or Chris Olave at 22, which was a little more of a dream, but there were certainly mock drafts that had him going 22nd. Olave goes 11th, Burks goes 18th, Dotson goes 16th. Like, Dotson went really, and I got my Penn State gear on, but Dotson went really over his draft stock, his expectations. So, yes, Christian Watson, body type 6'5" receiver. He kind of fits the bill, but at 28 in that draft, if you're Gutekunst, if you think these receivers left aren't first round talents, there's no reason to reach. Just because a lot of receivers already went doesn't mean you have to take one as well. So as long as they have a plan tonight, as long as there's a guy they've circled in on that they think as a second round pick could really be an impact guy for the Packers this coming season, I'm okay with it. I really believe in this front office. Jordan Love is really the only pick I've hated in the 4 years Gutekunst's been our GM, I believe. And like I always say, the history, whether it's Adams, Nelson, Jennings, Cobb, all these, James Jones, these are all day 2 picks. I mean, even MVS, not he was a star, but he was a day 3 pick and was a solid player for this team for a couple of years. He's now on the Chiefs, signed that 3-year deal with them. But I'm also not expecting the Packers to win the Super Bowl next year. So I think long term, we have Rodgers locked up for 4 to 5 years. I just think building up the defense is the right call, and eventually that receiver will come, whether it's a trade, whether the guy we pick tonight turns into a star, whether it's next year's receiver draft pick, whoever it may be. It will come in time. But building up this defense, something that plagued the Packers for so many playoff runs from, I would say, 2012 to 2019, really. Or 2020, actually. Last year was the only time the Packers' defense really came through in the playoffs, and it was more the special teams and kind of the offense that let us down. I really think this is a good outlook for the Packers to have. So I'll wrap up my Packers thoughts there, but I really wanted to get them out there. One more winner I really thought to highlight, the Detroit Lions. They take Aiden Hutchinson second. A lot of people thought he would go first just a month ago. He slides to 2 after Trayvon Walker goes first. They get a possibly game-changing pass rusher. And then trading up to get Jamison Williams, who I understand is coming off the ACL tear. But for the Lions, I like Amon-Ra St. Brown a lot, but people have told me, you're kind of overvaluing him. He's more of a possession guy. He's kind of short. I hear that. But now that Jamison Williams is there, now I'm more optimistic about Amon-Ra St. Brown, because if Jamison Williams is healthy, I know he might miss the first few weeks of the season, but there's a chance he's the best receiver in this draft class when he gets healthy. And as much as it pains me to say, I think the Lions got 2 really good players in this draft. So I think they killed it as well. I think their rebuild is going good so far. So just bring me a few losers real fast before I wrap up the video. First of all, it got to be the quarterbacks in this draft class. We knew it wasn't a strong quarterback draft class, but some people thought Malik Willis would go 6th to the Panthers or 8th to the Falcons, maybe in Seattle. He falls out of the first round entirely. And then Kenny Pickett, everyone was mocking to the Steelers just because he went to Pitt. And I always thought that was flawed logic until the Steelers actually picked him last night. You can say the Steelers need a quarterback. Mitch Trubisky isn't the long-term answer. But I am more subscribing to the thought process that teams like the Eagles and the Lions are taking with their quarterback in this for this draft. Whether it's Goff or Hurts, and I actually think Hurts, depending on what he does this year, he might just wind up being the Eagles starter long term, but he's got to prove it. But whether it's Hurts or Goff, I think the Lions and the Eagles really were like, we're not going to force a quarterback draft pick this year. We can wait till next year when there's these guys who are much better. The Eagles have the draft capital to trade up if they need it. The Lions will just be bad. They'll be able to draft the quarterbacks, but it's better to wait when there's not the high-end talent than filling a need just because you have a need. It's just like I was just saying with the Packers with the receivers. I would hold the same belief with a team like the Steelers at quarterback. Let Mitch Trubisky see how he does. He's had okay seasons, and that's on really poorly constructed Bears teams. Maybe on the Steelers, maybe he's able to do something. I would have taken maybe Linderbaum. He was still on the board at that point. I would have taken an offensive lineman if I was the Steelers front office. It's been plaguing them for 3 years now, and I still don't think they've made enough substantial improvements on the O-line to help the team out this season, help Najee Harris out this season. So we'll have to see what happens with the Steelers. I wasn't a fan of the Pickett pick. It's not really so much about Pickett. It's more about the value of this draft. But the quarterbacks certainly losers. And then guys like Corral and Desmond Ridder, I have no clue where they're going to go because if Willis ain't off the board and it took Pickett that long to get drafted, yeah, I'm a little worried about guys like Corral and Ridder and where they're going to fall, or Sam Howell as well. So quarterback certainly a loser. Titans, I got to kill him. I'm really subscribing to the Colts as the division favorites in the AFC South next season. I think they've made a lot of good moves. Don't like what the Titans have done really at all. It looks like they're really going to depend on Derrick Henry, and that makes me happy because I have him in Dynasty Fantasy Football. Makes me confident he'll give me a good season. But to rely on one player so much, especially a running back, when Derrick Henry just missed half the season, and you lost his really good backup in Foreman as well. I'm worried about them because the receiver room is they trade AJ Brown because I guess they didn't want to pay him, and I understand you got to save your salary cap, but who is the money going to? Like, why not pay AJ Brown? He's 24. I know he's had a couple injuries, but you're counting on Treylon Burks, who, while he was supposed to go in the first round, I don't think was certainly not considered on the same level as those first three receivers, Olave, Wilson, and London, and Jameson Williams. So really the top four, and Robert Woods coming off the ACL tear. I just don't think those guys are reliable enough to keep this Titans team. And when you have a quarterback like Tannehill, who looked a little bit worse without Arthur Smith, his offensive coordinator, who made him look fantastic for a few seasons there, I'm really concerned about this Titans offense. Their defense was really good last year. I think they're well coached by Mike Vrabel. I'm not saying the Titans are going to suck. I think they'll compete. But ultimately, I'm not a fan of their offense right now. And then also they trade out of... And trading down is not necessarily a bad thing. But when a guy like Jermaine Johnson, who, like I said, I haven't done a ton of homework on him, but when so many people are saying, oh, this guy's fallen, he's great value here, and you trade out of that pick and don't get him, and the Titans could use some edge rushers. Like, besides Harold Landry, they don't have a lot of defensive ends or outside linebackers that are high quality. That could have been a great pick for them there. That kind of made up for the whole A.J. Brown thing, but I'm not a fan of what they did at all, and I really haven't been a fan of their offseason, so I'm a bit concerned about them. And finally, one more team that I think, or not team, one more guy that I think is a huge loser, Jahan Dotson, because he goes from Penn State. I was really hoping the Packers got him, but even teams like the Chiefs were in there at the end of the first round, and even a team like the Ravens or someone like that, or even Tampa Bay if they hadn't signed Russell Gage. I don't know. But there was enough teams there that Jahan Dotson had the opportunity to go play with a really, really good quarterback. I was like, going from Sean Clifford to Pat Mahomes or Aaron Rodgers, Jahan Dotson might be the breakout star of the draft for all we know. Instead, he gets stuck with Carson Wentz and the Commies, the Commanders. Yes, he stays with Katie Feeney. I guess that's a good thing, but I just feel bad for Dotson. I'm not saying he's not going to have a good career now. He could certainly still be productive, but he had a chance if he had fallen to where everyone thought. It would have been actually better, in my opinion, for Dotson to fall. Maybe he'll get paid a little bit more before his rookie contract's up, but that's financially is really the only benefit I see for Dotson in this situation. So that kind of stinks for him. Makes me sad as a Penn State fan. But nonetheless, those are my winners and losers, my takeaways for day one of the NFL draft. It'll be really interesting to see what happens tonight on day two because there's still a lot of good players out there, especially on offense, whether it's the quarterbacks, the running backs, the tight ends. No tight end has been taken yet. And there's a lot of Penn State players that could go tonight. Ebiketie, Jaquan Brisker, Brandon Smith. So it'll be interesting to see all that goes down tonight. Hopefully the Packers get a receiver because even though I said I'm happy with our picks, I would still like a receiver. So thank you guys for watching the video today. Went a little long, but I really wanted to get all my takes in. So thank you, and have a great rest of your day. I forgot to talk about the Cardinals in my losers section, as I said. I was editing the video, and I realized I totally forgot to do that. Just briefly, I'll just do it real fast because I already ended the video. Cardinals, you can't trade a first-round pick for Hollywood Brown, who's probably only like the 40th best receiver in the league. That's almost as bad as Christian Kirk signing for like $24 million a year with the Jags or whatever that was. That was crazy. But whether it's Kirk, Hollywood Brown, I really think these receivers have been overvalued this offseason. I guess Hollywood Brown played with Kyler in college, so I guess that's why they did it. But I think this stunts Rondale Moore's growth as a speedster guy that they could have developed. Now he's going to be stuck behind Hollywood. Hollywood might be better right now, but it's a guy they invested a high pick in Rondale Moore, and they're not really giving him a chance to develop. I just don't really... Cardinals are a team I don't like the direction they're going in. Weird stuff with Kyler in the offseason. Defense is iffy. I don't know. I think the Rams are better, and as long as the Niners figure out this Debo thing, I see them being better than Arizona too. Arizona just seems like a team that's all talk, all bark, no bite. Like, I don't know. And to trade a first-round pick for a decent receiver who really, and he's maybe more injury prone than AJ Brown is, and AJ Brown is at least proven to be better than Hollywood when healthy. So I don't hate Hollywood as a player. I think he's a solid player. I just first round didn't get it. So that's the only other loser I wanted to talk about. But other than that, thanks for watching my video. Have a great rest of your day.